I don't know about you guys, but have you guys ever wondered what you're doing with your life? Kind of asking yourself if you've made it far enough along so far, if you're doing what you should be doing up until this point, or even thinking that you had somehow planned for yourself to be in a certain place, but looking at your life right now, you don't feel like you're quite there yet. And I don't know if you guys feel this way too, but this kind of low level of frustration for not feeling like you quite met your expectations for where you thought you would be at this point. I think for me, really, life has kind of been that way lately. I never imagined that in my mid-30s that life would be what it is right now. I imagine thinking back a few years ago, had dreams and expectations that maybe at this point I would have like a family, have some sort of fulfilling career, working something in a field where I could make an impact in the world, using my skills and intelligence and knowledge to somehow impact the world, and with some sort of fulfilling family life where the grandparents, myself, and the children, we all getting along. But lately I've been looking around and it just feels like life is not turning out that way. And it's obvious when I hear people say it, but life never turns out the way that we expect, but I just didn't realize and expect how different it would be. Joanne and I are getting married next week, and looking around, things couldn't be any more different, any more drastically different than what my expectations were even just a few months ago. First, because of the pandemic, we're doing essentially a small family-only Zoom wedding. And after the wedding, the living situation, we don't plan on moving out because, well, life just doesn't allow for that right now. My parents need to be cared for. We have to stay here because they need us. Which, by the way, I just gotta say, Joanne has been incredible throughout this entire process. She has been so incredibly helpful, so self-sacrificing. She's outside working out right now while I'm filming this, and she'll see this later, but she's been just absolutely supportive throughout this whole process. So I really could not have asked for a better and more supportive helper. She's just an absolute beast, and in a way that I never really thought the word could be used to describe. Just this beast of kind-heartedness and patience. But back to how I'm feeling like I haven't really accomplished as much as I expected, even in my career. How I haven't even come close to accomplishing what I thought I would be able to when I was younger. And on top of that, I just remember thinking back, like even just a few years ago, looking at some of my friends and people that I knew making it onto those Forbes 30 under 30 type lists. And people from my high school and people from my college, making it onto internationally recognized forums, or, starting companies that they eventually sold to like other big companies like Apple for millions of dollars. And here's me kind of sitting here looking at them, feeling like they're pushing the boundaries of human innovation and really making like a big impact in the world. And I'm sitting here like, well, what have I done? And what made it even worse is that this week I kind of fell down this rabbit hole of reading Wikipedia articles. Sometimes you'll get into this maze of Wikipedia articles, you just keep opening new tabs, open another new tab to read about this, and that leads you to another new tab reading about this, and eventually down the road you have like 100 new tabs and you don't read any of them because there's just too many articles for you to go through. The knowledge is just overwhelming. But I somehow started reading about mathematicians, physicists, scientists, people whose names exist in your high school calculus or high school physics, science textbooks. They're the guys that have theorems named after them, laws named after them, like the Cauchys and the Pascals, the Eulers, the Newtons, and people like that of the world. And it was just kind of blowing my mind, like as far as how far they were able to go and how much they were able to accomplish at, whatever age they were at. Some of these guys were like in their teens, in their early 20s when they came up with, this mind-blowing discovery or some new mathematical theorem, things that would go on to change the world, and their names would go down in history in the textbooks of kids that would have to go and study them and groan and have to memorize and have to not understand why they're learning about it because we're never going to use this high school math ever again in the rest of our lives. And it's really not all that different from like the gifted sports stars and the gifted athletes and musicians and stuff who at a very young age are able to command huge audiences and just exert so much influence on people at such a young age. And how these types of people with their talents and gifts are able to touch so many lives, and how even with these mathematicians and scientists, how some of their discoveries undergird the very technology that we use today. And so I was reading about these people, and I was just thinking like how impressed I am with who they are, what they discovered, and how they were able to do that, how their genuine curiosity and thirst for knowledge and their desire to find something new, and that it just led them to this place where, they've created this lasting impact on the world that exists even today. And so, I caught myself thinking how awesome it would be, and if I had told myself, my 15-year-old self that, one day down the road you would be looking at the math textbook in front of you and, you see this person's theorem and you would kind of wish that you had been like them, and that one day I would wish that I had, the genius and the insight to, come up with something new that then my name would be attached to, that kids for generations to come would be tested on and complained about and, never fully understand why they're learning it. But there I was this week just totally enamored by, the lives of these guys who, were able to do so much in such a short amount of time. And so for me this week, I think that's where a lot of this frustration was, kind of just thinking about my situation, thinking about, my place in life right now, and just kind of feeling like, look, what have I really done? But then it was at that exact moment that something happened that really just opened my eyes to the truth of the situation. I just finished feeding my mom and kind of caring for her and cleaning her up. And my dad actually stopped by and he looked at me and he said, he told me thanks. And then he said, Frank, I need you. And it dawned on me in that moment that how much more important is it for me right now to be exactly where I am. Not to be off leading some multinational corporation, not to be off in some other part of the world doing some sort of groundbreaking research, but instead being right here, to be in this situation where things are less than ideal, but to serve in this very necessary capacity. And that's what I wanted to share with you guys today. It might be nice in the eyes of the world to, have a lot of influence and create that sort of lasting change that, pervades generations. But oftentimes, even though our sphere of influence may be small, don't mistake small for unimportant. There are those people in our lives and those around us that need us, that depend on us exactly as we are. And so although it might not be the whole world that we're touching, for that person, it could be the world to them. And so it also reminds me that, this is one of the reasons why I came back to YouTube and why I want to start making videos again. And so there's this very timely comment from Joshua here who wrote this week that, I'm one of the OGs and that, here the setup on YouTube hasn't really changed and neither has my content. And that even though my channel is small, that this small sphere of influence that I have, that this is not unimportant. And so I really appreciate that, and it makes me super thankful because I realize that, one, I'm also able to read all of your comments and respond to all of your comments, and that if this was somehow a bigger channel, that this would be impossible. And if I'm able to reach just even a couple of you guys, that this is already totally worth it, and that this is exactly where I'm meant to be right now. And so I just want to ask you guys to reflect and share, what small sphere of influence do you see in your life? Which individuals in your life do you have influence on right now, and how is your influence in their life kind of like their world? As always, I'm super looking forward to seeing what you guys have to share. Some of your insights and your sharing is just incredible in the comments. And so as I end, I'll just leave you with this Dr. Seuss quote that I came across that's just so relevant. It says, "To the world you may be one person, but to one person you may be the world."